Okay. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Jessica Foley, Chief Scientific Officer for the Focused Ultrasound Foundation. I've been leading our efforts promoting advancement of women in the field of focused ultrasound, including the Women in Focused Ultrasound Interest Group that we launched just over 2 years ago. The last Women in FUS event that we held was a luncheon at our biennial symposium this past October, where more than 100 people gathered to network and discuss challenges and opportunities for our community. It was a really great turnout with no seat left empty, and it was fantastic to see so much interest in these efforts. As you're probably well aware, March is Women's History Month, and we thought this was a perfect time to spotlight and learn from some of the extraordinary women leaders in our focused ultrasound community. We're so pleased to have a great panel with us today, including leaders who are advancing cutting edge research and educating and training the next generation. These women are also passionate about bringing equity, diversity, and inclusivity to our field. Since launching our Women in FUS group, a topic of continual interest has been mentorship, including how to secure mentorship and maximize these relationships, as well as how to be an effective mentor. And so these are the themes that will be the topic of today's discussion. Each speaker will share insights about the role of mentorship in their own career journeys. So now let's get going with this discussion. In the interest of time, I'll let each panelist introduce themselves as they share a brief overview of their career journey. So let's start with Elisa.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Jessica, thank you so much for organizing us every time. I think it's important for everyone, including us, I think, and learning from each other and hopefully making a mark. So I'm Elisa Konofagou. I'm at Columbia University. I'm a professor here for almost 20 years. Very briefly, my journey has been pretty much in ultrasound over the past almost 30 years. I have started from the imaging world where I was working on elastography, so imaging of the mechanical properties of tissues, and then slowly transitioned to therapeutics and haven't left since during my postdoc years. So I think that's it, right, for the introduction?
Yep, that's great. Next, Isabelle, how about you introduce yourself?
Thanks so much, Jessica, and echoing Elisa's words into how grateful I am to be here and share a few thoughts. So I started my journey in neuroscience at McGill University as a PhD student, and for my postdoc at the Salk Institute, I study regeneration. And then you're all wondering, why is she doing in focused ultrasound? Well, that started about 15 years ago when Dr. Claire Bohinen joined Sunnybrook Research Institute, and I was introduced to the great world of focused ultrasound. And for a neuroscientist to have access to such amazing, innovative technology and working with people like all of you is just tremendous fun and enlightenment. So that's how I started. And yeah, I'll leave it as that for now.
Great. Natasha.
Hello, everyone. My name is Natasha Sheybani. I'm an assistant professor in biomedical engineering at the University of Virginia and a research director of our Focused Ultrasound Cancer Immunotherapy Center here. And I think that serves as a nice preface for what I do. I've had the good fortune of kind of growing up with this field in a way, and I think many of the women in this panel have heard this from me before. It's really a tremendous honor to serve in these settings alongside people that I've really looked up to for years now. So I did my training beginning in 2015, my PhD training at the University of Virginia. Went through my PhD and went off to Stanford to do a postdoc, and then was recruited back to UVA as a faculty about a year and a half ago. So I'm on the very early end of my journey, but I'm really honored to be here and share with you all what I think have been really critical nuggets of wisdom about how to be both a good mentee as well as a good mentor. So I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Thanks, Natasha. And Jen.
Hi, my name is Zhen Xu. I'm a professor of biomedical engineering at the University of Michigan. I started research in focused ultrasound in 2001 at University of Michigan, my PhD. So have been over 20 years and have been working on histotripsy for the past over 20 years. So very straightforward. And I have stayed at University of Michigan, did my PhD postdoc, research faculty, then the tenure track faculty. It just isn't uncommon, I would say, to stay in the same place. But great to be here. And I think this kind of event is really wonderful. And thank you for including me.
Great. Thank you all. So I wanted to sort of start with just some questions around the benefits of mentorship and kind of how mentorship can really be impactful, particularly, I think, for women in science throughout their career. So maybe I will turn to Isabelle first to just sort of give us, your own views on why it's, important to have some mentors throughout, or the role that mentors can play throughout your career.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, Jessica. I think for me, it's really basically all the mentors I have in my life, and listening to all of you, I think I'm probably the oldest one here. I am pretty sure of that. But through my mentorship, through the mentors that I had, they shaped me into who I am today and how I can move forward in my own experience. So I think through all this experience, hopefully we gain some wisdom that we can then, pass on to the next generation of scientists. And one of the challenge early on, I think it's developing this know-how. Like, we're new in the system. When I first got my job at Sunnybrook, they put me in my office and they say, you're on your own. And they didn't say you're on your own, but you know what I mean? I was like there and thinking, oh, okay, what do I do now? So finding these mentors that help me navigate the system, learn some tricks of the trade from them, develop connection and network so that I can get, better knowledge of the field and what to do for promotion, for picking students, and all of this. It really, really helped me out.
So it sounds like, it's useful to have mentors at various different stages, and that they could be helpful and impactful for different things at different stages. So does anyone want to kind of talk about that, and maybe the types of mentors that you could have, that you could seek out at different stages of your career, or even in a certain stage of your career, having mentors for different things as well? Does anyone want to? Jen?
Okay.
Elisa, okay. I would say go first, and I want to just share a personal story on the mentor that may answer some of the questions, because for me, mentors have been really extremely important in my career development path. So when I finished my PhD, both of my parents, they didn't even go to high school, but because of historical reasons, like a Cultural Revolution in China, so they were, working on labor farm when they should have been in school. But anyway, so it was really already beyond their imagination, and I got a PhD. And then after I finished, and they were like, what should I do? And I can't really get advice from my family. And I figured I will go and find a job in the company, in the industry, that I can at least, make a decent living, right? So that's what I did. I went on interviews, and Charles King, my PhD mentor, former PhD mentor at the time, said, wait a minute, have you considered academia? And I was like, it sounds great. I like research, but I have no clue how to, stay in academia and pursue a career or become a professor. I didn't know how to do that. And he said, have you thought, if you think you're interested, you should at least try, right? Because it's so much harder to switch from industry to academia. And if you're, find later that academia is not your call, you can always switch from academia to industry because of the publication thing. So then he actually offered me a tenure, the research faculty position, which allowed me to actually be a PI on grants and experience how this academic career is like without really the pressure of a tenure track position, and allow me to co-mentor some PhD students with him. So that's kind of opened the door for me to go into academia, and then kind of give me advice along the way, all the way to how to get a tenure track position. So I would not be able to be where I am now without that mentor, that advice. So I think first of all, I do think mentor is really important, especially for people who don't have that kind of family or social kind of background to help you navigate through this kind of advanced high career path. And now on the other thing is, I totally agree you need mentors at different career stage. So more than one, like multiple, and it would be better if you have mentors that's outside your department, even outside your institution. So there's no like conflict of interest when you want to discuss certain matters. And then with different matters, different issues, you may want to seek help from different people. And I think it's more about the particular issues that you encounter, and identifying that person that you may want to get advice from, and it may not be someone you have to be intimate with or really close with, but it's okay to reach out, to just ask a question and get some feedback. I'll stop here.
Alyssa, did you want to?
Yeah.
Seem to have something to say. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, Zen, I mean, it's incredible. I get inspired by all of you, the stories that I hear. So mine was a little bit different, and obviously there's no real recipe. I think for anyone, like, you have to find a mentor, or you have to find the person that holds your hand. I mean, most likely, you, like Zen said, I mean, you have to basically, seek it out. And sometimes you're not lucky, and you're not being assisted and or encouraged. So I had some of that, and I was encouraged to basically go to industry, and I did interviews in industry, and I was sure that academia was for me, basically. And that's why I say to my students that you should go and see for yourself, because sometimes things appear that are very good or exactly what you wanted, your dream job, and then you go there, you meet the people. At least in my case, it wasn't clicking. So then I had to go with my gut, basically, and saying, I really love research. I really like to be in the lab. I really also trust my ideas. And that's the other thing, that I was lucky to have some confidence. And there wasn't anybody calling for me. I mean, that's, at least from what I understand, I had to send my CV to the academic positions and that were being announced and hope for the best. I mean, luckily it worked out. And I had one person actually who stepped in and, unbeknownst to me, did recommend me with a phone call, but he was not my direct advisor. He was actually on my thesis committee, and he was kind enough to basically say, you should look at her. So sometimes it happens without your request or without your seeking, but I will definitely encourage, if you like what you do, and and obviously a lot of us do, and you feel that you're good at it, and how you can sense whether you're good at it, because we're all pushing away this imposter syndrome. I'm sure I'm going to talk about this now. But you have to push that away and then look at the facts, right? If you're publishing, if you're doing good research, if you're presenting, there's something that you can obviously, offer to the field. And I think that's the talent that we're trying to catch through this work, webinar, through everything that we're doing, is to catch and not let women or men as talented students, postdocs, and later faculty leave the field or think that they're not good enough. So basically, just go with what you like to do, and eventually it pans out. Eventually.
Natasha, I know from discussions with you that you feel very strongly about the role of mentors and sponsors in your early career. So I'll give you the opportunity to talk about some of that.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, it's so like I'm literally like shaking with excitement right now because I just think everything that's been said is so spot on. And this is really a topic that I'm passionate about. I think that sort of split, between what we consider to be our mentors and our sponsors. I think big picture, there are those people that you can go to at any time and you can feel comfortable talking to. And I think those are the people that I consider to be my mentors. But then there are the people that Elisa just alluded to, who maybe unbeknownst to you are going to champion you behind closed doors or open up doors for you that you may not have even been aware of. And my own personal journey is absolutely a testament to that. I can point to so many things on my CV that were because somebody forwarded me an email or somebody sent me an opportunity that I wasn't even aware of. And then those things were total catalysts for my career and my future and my trajectory. So I think, like that is really important to be able to identify in one respect. So they say, surround yourself with people who will lift you higher. And I think we all have a gut feeling when we're interacting with people about who they're going to be. And then sometimes we will be pleasantly surprised by who they turn out to be. So one message I have is that mentorship, sponsorship, it's a very active process. And in fact, it's a proactive process, meaning that both from the side of the mentee and the mentor, I think the ideal case scenario is that both people are like actively thinking, actively seeking each other out. And there's a lot of communication happening both ways. And sometimes there's this false impression, in my humble opinion, that it's sort of this one-way street. Either the mentee needs to really be like the one who's pushing all the communication, or the mentees might feel a little relaxed about the situation and expect that their mentor will seek them out. So it goes both ways. And then something, just lastly that I've learned very recently, because I can totally identify with Isabelle's, so that picture she painted of like sitting in your office on the first day and feeling like, I've got it. I've made it this far. I know exactly what I'm doing. And then being like, oh my gosh, I'm kind of on my own here to like get the operation running. I absolutely had that feeling when I started this job. And up until that point, I felt very confident. I was like, I'm a networking fiend. I've got my mentors in place. I have so much support, but it turns out you can really never have enough. And what you need totally evolves throughout your career. And I think that's both from the perspective of who you are as a scientist, and for us as women, there are things that we really need to seek counsel from other women about. And I'm sure that will come up. So one last thing is, I think that an ideal mentor and the ideal thing to look for in a mentor is honesty and advocacy, meaning that your mentors should really be not only your biggest fan, like the people who are cheering for you the loudest, but also your toughest critic. And that's what brings me back to like the sitting in your office by yourself scene, where I think that it's great to have the people that you can go to and say, I need you to give it to me straight. Tell me why this grant is the worst grant you've ever read and how can I make it better, right? So like having that receptiveness as a mentee to be able to take critical feedback and iterate on it is also really important. And I hope that kind of, integrates with a lot of what's been said already, but maybe I'll leave it there for now.
That's great. Does anyone else want to kind of either share any more stories or talk about the types of, mentors that would be good to look for to, particularly in helping with whether it's, specific skills that you're looking to gain at different points of your career or navigating unique challenges at different points of your career. Just curious if anyone else has any insights on that.
Maybe I'll not necessarily on the type, because I think it was really well described by everybody from what I've heard and read into it, but also the timing. So when you start your career, my false impression, like Elisa was saying too, I had a huge imposter syndrome, and I still have that many, many, many times. That's fine. I'm dealing with it. But the other part is I was under the impression I need to do this by my own. I need to be strong. I need to be independent. I'm not reaching out for help. I need to dissociate with my previous mentors. Otherwise, I'm not seen as independent. So I went through a phase where I almost cut out my network because I thought I should do that by myself, which is wrong. And science is not in isolation, no matter which field you're in. Like, it's really, we need each other. So it's really, in terms of maybe going over that barrier, being independent doesn't mean you don't work in a team and you don't have mentors. You have mentors.
That's a great point. Yeah.
I also, I agree with Isabelle. You always have to reach out. Like Natasha said, you have to check whether you have the worst grant or not, and I'm sure you don't. But anyway, but it's always good, I think, as you go through your career. I mean, we all like have different kinds of issues as we grow as faculty or as a career person. And it's important to check with other women and men, how they're doing things or learn from them. Like, I used to actually see, the men in my department, and they will have, family or very, very young children, and then they will spend more time in the office. And I will, so you can guess like who's doing all the work. And most of the time, I'm not going to say every time, but most of the time, when you start a family, you start a career, it's almost like opening a closet that you haven't opened in a while. Everything falls on you, and including the empty lab, the grants not coming in, the students, not necessarily wanting to join your lab. Everything that you have is a pain as a starting faculty. So I think it's very good to check with, again, both male and female colleagues and see, how did you do it? Like, or, the work-life balance that, even students are asking me about this all the time. Like how everybody's asking me that. So, because unfortunately we have, we can't ignore the elephant in the room sometimes. If we want to have families, of course, I mean, some women and men don't want to have kids, and that's fine. But if you do want to have, then you have to time it well. And COVID showed us how difficult it is for women to balance all that. I mean, a lot of women quit academia just because it was impossible. They couldn't get childcare. So, so that's at the core of what's happening, and just getting advice or getting some kind of a, path, the idea that you can follow, at least for now, it's always good.
And this has come up several times, but I think we'd probably all agree that it's important to have mentors who are women, and it's also important to have mentors who are men, and like the perspective can be different, and in terms of championing you for different things or opportunities that they may be aware of, it's important to or not to exclude one or the other, so but I think sometimes women think, well, I definitely need female mentors, which I think is great, and there are areas where particularly helping you navigate some of the maybe systemic things in your institution that may be harder for women, and so they can help you navigate that. But it's equally important to have mentors who are not women as well, I think. So I think what I'd like to talk about next is what I think is a big question that most people have, and that is, how do you find mentors? How do you initially do you seek people out? Do you just wait for something to sort of organically develop? And then once you find someone who you think would be a great mentor, how do you really cultivate that relationship? And so if anyone wants to jump in there. Jen?
Yeah, I will jump in. So I have say, like, I maybe have two kinds of mentors that I have been benefiting from. One is the people I really trust, I'm close to. For example, like a PhD mentor or people on my dissertation committee, or even people who may not be in the same kind of area, but just over the time that just even close friends that close and trust, right? But then there that you can call when you encounter an issue. But there are also kind of mentors where who encounter the same kind of issue I encounter and have shown a success track record of solving those issues. And those people may not be the people who I'm close to or I know well, but being able to make some connection. And I gave you an example that, I have been staying at University of Michigan forever. When I initially, was on the research faculty position and did an interview for tenure track position, I can tell you that I did well, and then they gave me an offer. But I literally, when the chair gave me an offer, I said no. And he said, "Why?" I said, during the interview, people were so critical of me coming from Michigan, and everybody were focusing on this whole independent issue, right? Like if you stay where you got trained, or how are you going to separate yourself from your former mentor or the dissertation committee members? Or how would you be ever successful to get a tenure, right? So that was really like the whole interview was surrounding around that, and just made me feel very uncomfortable. So even though they gave me a great offer and basically everything I wanted, and then it's a great university, I had collaborators there, already had grants and everything, I got really concerned. I was like, I'm afraid that this is not gonna work out. And he's like, wait a second. If that's a concern, you should try to talk to someone who have the same experience to really learn if this is gonna work or not, and instead of just saying no directly, right? So I didn't know the person, but he was back then the chair of the electrical engineering department at the University of Michigan, and he literally did the same thing I did, a PhD, research faculty, tenure track, all the way to chair of the department, all at University of Michigan, while his mentor was also at the University of Michigan. And I was able to reach him via the introduction of my department chair, and able to talk to him and just say, what do you think? And he gave me really good advice. He's like, it really depends on what your mentor and how you guys, want to do this. And after that, I kept being in touch with him. He became one of my mentors, and I don't go to him for everything, but there are issues that related to where he had a experience that I can go to. So this is just a kind of example where when you encounter specific issue later, I also was actually particularly pay attention to people who, what they do. And when I encounter issue, I will think in my mind, I said, who had done this before, right? Like, I may not know this person well. Is there a way that I can reach a person to talk to him or her, regardless of the, gender or race? But because the personal experience is really helpful, right? So I will stop here for now.
Given the social media world that we live in and the digital age and everything, is it appropriate for someone to, email someone again who you may have met, or you share a colleague like that, or you share, someone in common, or like LinkedIn them and not say, do you want to be my mentor, but kind of say, hey, I'm interested in something that's similar to what you're doing. I'd like to chat. And then do you see that that could be a way to start a relationship that then maybe could evolve into mentorship?
I literally yesterday, I was talking to a postdoc who sent me an email. I didn't know the postdoc before, and he's a postdoc mentor, is someone I know pretty well. And he just said, oh, I'm encountering this issue that you have experienced with. My postdoc mentor told me, would you be willing to talk to me? And I said yes. And we had a 30 minutes call, and he got, he felt he got the advice he needs. I feel, I think it's entirely out of the blue with no connection is hard. But when he mentioned his postdoc mentor name, and I know that person really well, I was willing to share the time. So I think you need some kind of connection to be able to make the network working. And also there are different mentor program you can sign up for. I don't know if you guys, for example, IEEE has a ultrasonics. They have a mentor program that you can sign up, and then you can get connected to people who are registered for mentors for this program. Then you can, reach those people even you don't necessarily know them or they don't know you.
So yeah, I second that. I mean, I think it's very, very important to network, and I think we all, don't necessarily have that tendency because we like to spend time in the lab and do our experiments, grant writing. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're the most social person, but there are so many avenues to reach out. And I would say, don't just go with one avenue. Don't just send something over LinkedIn and never follow. I would say LinkedIn and then email, and potentially, not harass the person, but I think there's a lot of us that don't necessarily, look at the email when it first comes in. So, especially from somebody that we don't know. So if you feel that you didn't get a response, a lot of people get heartbroken, and I would say send another email, send another message, because when they don't know you, and don't think that you're being slighted. It's just, we're all bombarded with 1 million messages, these days. And also I would say, my experience has been also interesting. People do reach out, but I've also been reached out by parents of fellow colleagues that are parents, and they say, can you talk to my daughter most of the time? Can you just, spend some time on the phone or over email or whatever. Usually the daughter doesn't reach out, and then the parent kind of, nudges them further. Anyway, that's very sweet. And that actually comes a lot from, more from fathers than from mothers, I would say, because we have a lot of fathers as you guys know, a lot of in our field. So it's just very sweet to see that, there's a lot of females, potential STEM with STEM interest, and I think they just need somebody to tell them, other than parents, obviously, if this is the case, that you got it, you can do it, you can try this out. And I think just be a little bit bold. We all look scary. I think I look scary. Some students tell me that sometimes your pictures scare me. I'm sorry. I hope I'm not that scary, but we're here to help you. Especially academics, by definition, we're here to mentor and educate further. So this is part of our job description, as far as I'm concerned.
Maybe I can add a couple comments here too, just to add one more dimension to all the great things that have been said. I do believe that there's a lot of power in a cold email, maybe because I've done that a lot and have been really pleasantly surprised by how responsive and supportive people can be. I'm not saying I've had 100% success rate, but I think to Elisa's point, there are so many other variables, and I appreciate those even more now that I'm on the other end, being, bombarded with communication through so many different media. But big picture, I think that, where there is not necessarily a connection, or there is not necessarily somebody that you can reach out to. Even the step of reaching out to someone to then introduce you to another person takes some courage, right? But that is amplified when you don't necessarily know the person and you're going to basically introduce yourself. But I would say, go for it. The worst thing that happens is that you don't hear back. And yeah, that's a little bit discouraging. Maybe you try again, you still don't hear back, but then you know where you stand with that person and what their role is going to be with you as a mentor, which is kind of no role, right? That being said, I think one of the other things that I've really learned with time, and this is because I have people in my life who I have managed to keep in touch with for over 10 years now, is that it is really on you as the mentee to follow up. people are very busy, but people I think are very willing to be there for you and sort of like keep you on their radar screens when they see that you are putting in the effort. So like tactics that I've employed for doing this are sending emails to check in with people once in a while, or, you know, if I'm going to interact with them at a conference, I'll reach out in advance and say, hey, am I going to see you at this meeting? Can we catch up? A holiday email, a New Year email. I've kind of done it all. And it's literally just an effort to say like, hey, person that's been in my life that I don't have the good fortune of seeing more than once a year, I'm thinking of you. And here are my updates. Here's where I'm at in life. And sometimes those things organically lead to mentorship moments, or they kind of serve as a way to facilitate a certain need you may have for mentorship in that moment. So I think that email is a great way to do all of the above, but now being on the receiving end of a lot of those types of emails, I can say, I feel like all of us could probably spend 24 hours a day mentoring and it still wouldn't be enough. So you really just, I think, have to keep that in mind too, as you're sort of figuring out what strategy works best for you. And yeah, maybe I'll leave it there.
You know, I think that's a really, those are really good points, what you were saying about reaching out occasionally. I just to sort of check in, because I'm thinking from the perspective of someone who is a mentor, or, you know, if someone is just coming to you when they need something and they're just kind of like, oh, I need something right now. I need you to review something for me or whatever. I mean, that's not really the most effective relationship, right? I mean, you'd want them to actually, you'd want to have this kind of relationship where they could come to you to just share, like, this is what I've done. Oh, I had this great success. I want to let you know. And then it's not always like you're needing something from them. And so I like what you do, Natasha, which is you're saying, you know, you just, hey, I'm thinking of you. I'm going to be at this meeting. Do you want to catch up, or that sort of a thing? So
the other thing, if I could, because I forgot one thing, and it just kind of ties into this theme, like these things take time and effort, right? And I think it's easy for all of us to forget when we're really busy. But like an example I've experienced now being on the other end is, you know, I think it's very common to like strike up a great conversation and, you know, feel in that moment like this is someone you want to go to for mentorship, or establish that in the moment. But if you do not follow up, then I think it leaves the person, like the mentor, with the impression that maybe you're not as serious about having that mentorship relationship. And so I would say there, again, like following up and being very deliberate. Like if you're at a conference and you meet somebody, you ask for their business card, you take down their email, and then you do your due diligence to follow up with that person. And I think that's such an important show of like good faith in establishing the relationship. And I think it's just something that very easily slips through the cracks. So I think like now that we are back in the world of in-person interactions, that's a really important thing to keep in mind. And the same thing goes for like the classroom. You know, undergraduate students will come up and say, hey, I want to do research. And it's like, yeah, fantastic, let's talk about it. But then, you know, the responsibility, I think, is then on that person to follow up. And so for those who happen to be that person in the situation I'm describing, just know that that's really the only bottleneck sometimes to really fortifying the relationship. I think you're muted, Jessica.
Isabelle, I noticed that you unmuted. Did you have something you wanted to add?
I have, but then they all said it so well. It's the power of I forgot to remute myself, but it's the power of human connection. And I think if the email, you know, is not responding, like if you see somebody, just make that connection. Or even I see attendees in the participant list, and if they write an email saying, I was at the webinar and the group discussed this, can you please help me with that? Like, already there is a connection that you can build on, so that makes it a little bit easier. And I see there's a question so I'll let you handle that, Jessica.
Yeah, we'll get to those. Jen, did you want to add something?
I just want one thing. I think we have been talking about mentor and assuming that mentor is someone senior, has more experience, but I think there's also a lot of opportunity in terms of peer mentoring, who, you know, referring to people, peers who could be of the same age, similar kind of experience, but they may have experienced things that you have not, and can give you some information or provide you, and are willing to share something that can be beneficial for you. So I think the power of peer mentoring should not be ignored, and it's something that some people may feel more comfortable and easier to access, and something to cultivate over the time. And really, when you get to a certain age, right, like it would be harder and harder to find someone more senior, and that peer mentoring would be actually becoming more and more helpful.
Yeah. And I think, maybe it goes without saying, and hopefully everyone here agrees, but I think, for people that are watching this live, participating live, or watch this later, we would welcome any outreach from any of you on questions or whatever it may be. And perhaps one of the people on this call ends up being a mentor for someone here that they don't know. So I think that's great. And again, sort of thinking to the future, by staying in touch with our Women in Focused Ultrasound group, we can definitely have discussions about whether there's anything the foundation can do to help connect people to potential mentors or things like that. So we'd be happy to have those follow-up discussions. Let's see. Someone says, sort of asking about again, I think just connecting to people in the field of focused ultrasound. If you're not in that field at all already, kind of the reaching out can be difficult, and trying to find someone to help potentially be a mentor or helping you understand what's going on or how to get involved. And so I think any of us would be happy to talk to you, and kind of go from there, or help connect you to people that may be the appropriate person to talk to as well. So I think what I wanted to have the opportunity to do here as well, since everyone here is also a mentor. I mean, they've been a mentee, and they're also mentors. So talk a little bit about what you think is really valuable about being a mentor yourself, kind of what's maybe inspired you to become a mentor to other people, not just women, but others in your field, and as well as what you think is required to be an effective mentor. Does anyone want to start there?
I mean, I think the main thing is that satisfaction of seeing people succeed and do well, and do, in their careers, finding something that they enjoy, going, to work every day. I think we strive for that in our mentees, whether they were going to be our own students, postdocs, or, former colleagues. And I think, and vice versa. I mean, I think it's just very difficult in the beginning of everybody's career. And then I don't think everybody has shared the good, the bad, and the ugly with everyone. So I think being able to say, hey, I was in your shoes, it wasn't good. My grants were getting rejected, my papers were getting rejected. I wasn't able to get the students that I wanted, or the postdocs that I wanted at the beginning. Like, you're not the only one facing these hardships. And so it's important to share and share your vulnerability as a mentor, as opposed to just say, how well you're doing. I mean, obviously, as a senior person, you can flaunt, but I think that's not the point of a mentor. A mentor is supposed to be, more humble than the mentee, if possible. I actually say to my students and my postdocs, like when they graduate, I hope you do better than me. I mean, I know that I didn't necessarily have everything in line when I was starting out, and I think we're striving for people, especially in focused ultrasound, to do even better than us. And I was talking to an assistant professor in our department, and I was telling her, that it was tough. I didn't have a lab for 4 years when I started out, it's and she was also right now having problems like that, and I was trying to say, I was trying just to lift her up a little bit and say, it happens, and you can still, make it through. But some people really don't want to see progress. They don't want to see the same old, because you had it tough, that they should have it tough. Okay. So actually, if anything, we should make it easier for the people who are coming out, right? So, and then learning from what was done to you well, but also what should have been done better in your case, it's actually very important to apply the positive side of what could have been in your case. So I think so cheering your mentees on, making sure that they can do better than you, at your stage, or even at the stage that you're at now or previously, is just very important, I think, for the field in general.
Anyone else? Natasha?
I think echoing what was just said, one thing I just want to add to that too is, and I'm learning this in kind of transit, we can be mentors and mentees at every stage, right? But even that evolves. So what I'm learning kind of more recently is, in order to be the kind of mentor that Elisa is describing, it takes some vulnerability, honestly. I mean, for us as mentors, we have to be willing to admit where we have made mistakes, or where we have not necessarily been successful. And I think that takes some vulnerability. But when that vulnerability is shown, I've found that students respond really well, because they see that we're human and we're learning, and that we really want them to do better than we've done. And so I think from a mentoring perspective, just kind of like creating that safe space and like a culture of openness and transparency and honesty from both sides can go a long way. Because again, there are aspects of mentorship that are very like technical and scientific and sort of the business side of things. And I think we all kind of know what that looks like. But then there's a very personal side to it. And I think, you eventually hone in on who amongst your many mentors those particular people are that you can be, truly honest with and get like critical feedback from in moments where it's tough to be vulnerable with just anybody. So learning how to navigate that as a mentor, I have found to be really interesting. And I think it's sort of a skill that just comes with time and experience. But I will say I have even sought out mentorship from my mentors on how to be that kind of mentor for other people. So like every one of these scenarios is also a moment not only of offering mentorship, but kind of receiving it too.
I really like that. And I think it's a little bit like starting with, for the more junior people that are in the attendees as well, you can start small with creating I called it the bubble of love, like who you feel comfortable with. And you start with that and you seek mentorship for those. And then you go to mentorship that could challenge you and make you and express their vulnerabilities as well. So then you can see how to navigate that. And I think it's easier in retrospect to say, yes, I can embrace my vulnerability because I feel more confident in my role now. But when you start, it's really, really hard. At least it was for me to let that show. And now I think with experience, I can share many of my mistakes, and hopefully other can learn from it. But at the beginning, it's not easy. So start small and go from there.
So I agree and appreciate everything was being said. So excellent. I want to talk about 2 points that I found important. Kind of relate to the sharing the variability. One is the first point. I always as a mentor, I think it's important to show I care. Okay, whenever approach you with the issue, maybe you don't have the best advice solution, but just show I care. And it's it's okay for you to share with me, and I'm willing to listen. And I think that's the first thing to kind of show that you matter, right? Regardless what you can, as a mentor, you can offer, you want to let the mentee know that I do care about you and you matter. And second thing is, I think, at least as a mentor, what I don't do, and I hope I don't do, is to hold the hands and tell the mentee like exactly what you should do. And I don't think that's a role of a mentor. I think it's more important, because from my personal perspective, I found it's helpful when someone just help me shine a light and tell me all the information that I need, so that I can then eventually make the informative decision myself, but I don't necessarily need someone to tell me exactly what to do. So being the someone to shine the lights of the path, right? And then just say, okay, these are all the perspectives that maybe you should consider. Have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? And this information about that, so that you can provide all the information and maybe some suggestion, but not saying you should do this. So that's the two things that at least I try to follow.
That's great. Let's see. And I'd encourage anybody, if you have any questions, there's still time for some questions. I did want to highlight a couple things that were put in the chat. One, Jen put a link to the IEEE UFFC professional networking and mentorship program that she mentioned earlier. So that's, I think, a great resource for people here. And then also, it was mentioned that at the ASA meeting in this spring in Chicago, there will be a session on best practices in mentoring for biomedical acousticians. And there will be several women scientists that are participating in that, providing perspectives from both the mentor and mentee side. So encourage people to check that out if they're going to be at the ASA meeting. That could be a great discussion, as well as a place to find potential mentors. So that's excellent. And then again, I'll have Paige put in again the link to our sign up to the Women in FUS interest group, which again, we'd love to have any of you sign up for that, and we can continue these discussions both online as well as in person. So I think, we have a few minutes left. I just wondered if any of you kind of in closing wanted to just give some general advice, anything that we haven't touched on yet that you feel you want to share for this group here before we close out. Let's see. Well, Natasha, do you want to go first?
Pressure is on to go first. I will give maybe a couple words here that are in line with this sort of like rebellious take that I've relayed on mentor-mentee relationships. I think the take-home message is be bold. Your journey is really in your own hands, whether that is your graduate career, your pre-graduate career, your postgraduate career. I mean, I think that is one of the hardest things for us to fully realize and like act upon as women, to basically say, you know what, I'm going to act now and apologize later, whatever that looks like. And so basically, when it comes to mentoring, we were talking about these sort of moments of hesitancy. Like there was a comment in the chat about, I go to conferences, but then I'm really not sure how to follow up. And I think that can sort of snowball into a lot of other moments of self-doubt about how to follow up and if the follow-up is good enough and what the response might be. And at the end of the day, I think sometimes a lot of those thoughts can kind of be crippling when it comes to actually fulfilling the action itself. So, Elisa alluded to imposter syndrome earlier, and I think a lot of these thoughts and us getting in our own heads is a very personal journey. But I have found personally that sometimes my own harshest critic and the only thing holding me back from certain things is myself. And so I think be very conscious of that where you can be. And, just be bold and take action, especially when it comes to mentorship, because I do think that I still interact with a lot of people who are sort of under the impression that mentorship happens organically, and that's the only way it can happen. But the reality is that you are very much in control of that situation, have the power to create your own network, maintain it, and enrich it yourself. And hopefully there will be a lot of situations in addition to that where these things also happen organically.
Thank you, Natasha. Jen, do you want to have some final thoughts?
I want to share one thought that I talked to my this female student of mine who is graduating in a couple of weeks. And so she's going through this time period, really trying to figure out what her career path would be after that, and thinking back and forth, very really struggling, I guess. So I told her one thing, and I want to share with the group here, which is if you think something is worth trying, and just try it. Right? Like try it, really. Like you can get a lot of advice, but really the best, I shouldn't say the best way to learn, but the way you will remember them longest is through your own experience and then maybe your own mistakes, right? And especially I told her, it's like, she's really young, right? Like 20 something, just graduate. This is time to try things. When you get to my age with 3 kids, it's harder to try things, but it's a lot of opportunities. If you don't try it, you wouldn't know it would work for you or not, right? And there's why the advice I talked about earlier, the electrical engineering department chair who gave me and made me actually accept the tenure track position in Michigan back then was he said, you know what? If you take this position, you can always leave if you don't like it. It's not final. And so try to see if you like it and if it will work out. And I did it, and he was right? So I think just along with what Natasha was saying, be bold, not only about networking, reaching out to people, and also if you have opportunity that come your way, don't think too hard about it. If you think it's worth trying, just go ahead and try it. And a lot of times things work out.
Isabelle, do you want to have some final words?
Sure, briefly, I find relationship is work, mentorship is work on both sides, mentor and mentees, but it's all worth it. So yes, be bold, stay yourself, stay true to your values. And like Zen, you were saying, also try. You may fail at anything, but if you don't try, you won't know. And if you fail, you'll learn from it. That's how we all grow. So yes, it hurts when it happens, but we do grow from it. And I think we all failed at one point. So it's just part of life, and it's hard to go through that, but we do grow from it and learn. And to me, mentorship is also about coaching and inspiring people and not managing or macro managing. So I think it's come back to the idea you had, Zen, of shining that light of the path that we want to go. So yeah, thank you, everybody.
Thanks. And Alyssa, you can have the last word.
No problem. Obviously, everything that was said was really right, spot on. I just, some people are not bold, and I want to say that, women and men, we are, much more capable, especially physicists and engineers. I mean, we've done a few things in our lives. I mean, we can be proud of. So learn from what you have accomplished. I mean, look at what you've done. I mean, sometimes I feel people are a lot in their heads, like we said, and they look at other people, I haven't got this faculty position, this postdoc position yet, or this job, and everybody else is getting a job and I'm not, and or I don't have as good of a job. So comparing yourself to other people, especially, people who have Instagram and they constantly have other people's news, which is great. But I think, everybody, all of us, and hopefully that came out, had a different path. I mean, it's not just because you didn't get, by your second year, your first paper in PhD, or by your second year in a postdoc, you didn't get an offer. for a faculty position, it doesn't mean that you have failed. It's just that you're creating your own path and you have to trust what's in front of you with what you've accomplished so far. So I think all of us can do a lot more and a lot better. And the idea of a mentorship and mentee is to help each other, and hopefully we can build that network and have more people as mentors too, and as mentees as we grow together. So that's the idea, I think.
Thank you. This has been a really great discussion. And we are up on time now. It's 12. So this concludes our discussion today. And I think we did get all the questions answered, which is great. But if you have any other questions or want more information, feel free to visit our website at fusfoundation.org or email us at info@fusfoundation.org. And again, you had that link if you want to sign up for the interest group. And I think any of us would be happy to talk to you about career type issues and give you some advice there. So just thank you everyone for joining us today, and stay tuned to our newsletter and our website for invitations for future webinars and online events. Have a great day, everyone.